Chapter 8, Motivation and Empowerment, based on Leadership by Professor Daft. This is presented by Linzi Kemp, SBM at AUS. Thank you for listening, Management 303 students. First of all, we are going to overview the objectives for this chapter. You will have a challenge. You're going to recognize and apply the differences between intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. You're going to be able to motivate others by meeting their higher level needs. You're going to appreciate the theories of motivation and how leaders can actually apply those theories. And we'll implement individual and system-wide rewards by looking at a model and also listening to a podcast that talks about what happens to rewards and whether monetary rewards actually do motivate people. First of all, let's review the forces, either internal or external to a person, that arouse enthusiasm and persistence to pursue a certain course of action. That's a definition we can use of motivation. You'll find that on page 200 of your text. Moving on to this model of motivation, of need, behavior, and rewards, let's follow it through to ensure that we understand how it works. So we have a need. That creates a desire. Think about the needs that you have. They may be similar to the needs that are given in the text, i.e. money, friendship, the need for recognition and achievement. That leads you to a certain action to fulfill those needs. That's your behavior. And the rewards that are given satisfy the needs, and they can be broken down into intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. Notice the feedback loop. The feedback comes from the reward, which informs you whether your behavior was appropriate or not, and whether that behavior should be used again. That's how leadership revolves in business. If we take the example of money, for example, then salary causes a behavior. You fulfill your job, you get a reward of salary. That goes back into your need, money to live on during the month. The different types of rewards in more depth can be broken down into intrinsic rewards, internal satisfaction that you can receive in the process of performing a particular action. An example would be intrinsic. It makes you feel better. So even somebody saying thank you or a smile can lead to you having internal satisfaction. Another one would be if you help somebody and it leads to internal satisfaction. Extrinsic rewards are given by another person, extrinsic, external to you, usually a supervisor, i.e. your manager at work. That may be in the form of pay increases and or promotions. Rewards can be system-wide, i.e. everybody in the team or the organisation gets them. They're applied the same across the board. Individual rewards, however, will differ amongst different individuals within the same organisation or department. For example, think of a sales team. The more somebody sells, the higher they paid. It's usually called commission. Here's some examples of intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. So here we have, let's read this matrix across. Extrinsic, as an individual reward, would be a large merit increase based on a high performance from that particular individual. A system-wide reward, for example, would be equal insurance benefits given by the organisation to everybody. For example, health benefits. Intrinsic, as we see here, intrinsic for an individual, the feeling of self-fulfillment of doing a job right, doing it well. Intrinsic, system-wide, the pride in being part of a winning organisation, the pride of carrying out the mission, the pride of being number one in a particular area of expertise. Examples would be Amazon in the online book market. And you can probably think of others. We're now going to listen to a podcast. To do this, click on the link which will take you to a forum program. We'll listen here to a couple of minutes as the introduction is given of the forum, and then I would like you to listen to the whole piece about about rewards that were given by organisation were given in the business world, the big bonuses that were given to bankers that certainly boosted their image. But the research you will hear about in the podcast questions whether it actually did improve performance. We'll just listen to the introduction. You can listen further later on.
A world of ideas from the BBC. I'm Lise Doucette, this week's guest presenter. And today, faking it in the world of business. Is this the key to success? Economist Dan Ariely has some surprising insights into the behavior of big earners. Sociologist Shahzad Nadeem on the Indian call center workers who pretend to be Western. And secret double dealing. Do we conspire to deliver second best with philosopher Gloria Origi? Welcome to the forum, all of you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, hello. And now, let's go now to our first big idea for today, the posturing behind those big bonuses that bankers have become famous for. But many people throughout the workplace do get incentives of some kind. The big question is, do these perks actually improve our performance? Let's start with you, Dan Ariely. You're a professor of behavioral economics at Duke University in North Carolina in the United States. And this is one of your areas, I understand. It's been in the news a lot of late, mainly because of the outrage, even disbelief about these whopping bonuses that bankers still get in the midst of this financial downturn. Now, the bankers, as we know, insist that these bonuses are absolutely essential to their success. But I understand your research
To access the podcast
First,
of the
start
forum
by telling us
programme
about
from
your
the
research.
BBC, go to lecture notes, and within the lecture notes you will find the folder for this particular module. It's in part 4, the leader as a relationship builder, chapter 8, motivation, and here you can see the audio for motivation. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and finding out about the study where money didn't necessarily lead to extra performance. Please ensure that you answer the questions. We're now moving over to the needs of people and motivation methods. The rest of the chapter actually overviews quite some learning that you've already had in other courses. So I will expect you in this chapter to answer the self-assessment questions that appear and to also apply yourself to the discussion questions at the end of the chapter. But let's overview here about the needs of people and motivation needs to remind ourselves of the differences between perhaps what could be called a conventional management approach and a leadership approach, as you see here. Conventional management was looking at people's what are called lower needs, and we'll look at these in a bit more detail later. The idea being that a carrot and stick metaphor would motivate people, i.e. think of the donkey. You can motivate the donkey either by the carrot dangling in front of their head or by the stick whacking the donkey along from behind. That, notice here, is extrinsic rewards. The conventional management is about controlling people, and what we got out of it was, adequate effort, but not high-level superior effort. And this is where leadership comes in. Leadership addresses people's higher needs. It leads to empowerment, i.e. letting people take responsibility, but of course the leader needs to ensure that people are trained and have the ability to take that extra responsibility. Empowering people then meets their higher needs of self-fulfillment. And they gain intrinsic rewards, the satisfaction that comes from knowing internally that a job has been well done. This leads on to the growth of the individual because they are fulfilling their higher needs. And contrasting with the conventional method in management, which led to adequate effort or adequate performance, what we get is people applying their best effort, which should lead to better performance. Remind yourself of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can find more information on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, both in this PowerPoint presentation and also in your book if you reference pages 202 and move forward through Maslow's hierarchy of needs through to the dimensions in the two-factor theory as given by Hertzberg, which you'll find on page 205, and further information here about the areas of satisfaction that can be given through these motivators and the areas of dissatisfaction in this two-factor model where hygiene factors, a strange word, but it just means things like work conditions, pay and security, company policies, supervisors, they're known as the hygiene factors, will actually lead to dissatisfaction. How do they lead to dissatisfaction? Well, for example, the easiest way of showing it is, for instance, company policies here. Company policies are sometimes seen as constricting us, but imagine a situation where you didn't have any policies. Imagine at the AUS, where if there isn't registration for courses, then students won't be able to access the courses that they want. That would lead to a level of dissatisfaction. So if you look at these hygiene factors and the work conditions, the removal of which, or the absence of which, leads to dissatisfaction. On the other hand, the presence of these are not necessarily a motivator that can influence a higher level of satisfaction. McClelland's theory about the acquired needs theory can be found in your books on page 207, closely followed by other motivation theories such as the reinforcement theory that you can read about further. Pay attention on the sides of the pages where you get examples of the different definitions that we use. For example, reinforcement theory, as shown here, is also replicated on page 208. Now you will need to go to the leader's self-insight on page 8.2 about your approach to motivating others. Pause Chapter 8 motivation presentation at this point in order to go through the leader's self-insight, which is to think about a situation where you're in a formal or informal leadership role in a group or organization. For yourselves as students, imagine your personal approach in a project. Don't forget, we do have projects coming up soon. What you need to do is go through the 12 questions in your book and answer mostly false or mostly true for each of them. The definition of empowerment: power sharing, so that the leader is not keeping all the power to her or himself. It's the delegation of power or authority to subordinates, or as we call them in leadership, the followers, to people who are at a lower place in the organization than the manager or the leader concerned. Elements of empowerment. Which do you feel is most important? The employees receive information. That gives them knowledge, which is power. Employees receive the knowledge and the skills to contribute to the company goals. They have training, they have development, they gain the skills that will move us towards being a successful organization. Employees having the power to make substantive, important decisions, things that matter. That gives them more power. That's the power in empowerment. Employees need to understand the meaning and impact of their jobs and how their particular role fits with other people's role within the organization. And empowerment, they're rewarded based on the company performance. So those who perform at a higher level because they've used the information, they've applied their knowledge and skills, they've made substantive decisions, and have contributed a high impact in their jobs, they will be rewarded. You can see what is known as the empowerment continuum in this image. Ensure that you understand how the continuum works. Continuum means it continues. We're continuing from a low degree of empowerment to a high degree of empowerment. As we follow that through, notice that the employee skills required in a low degree of empowerment, the skills are few, whereas in a high degree of empowerment, leading to self-management, the skills are many and complex. Thank you for listening. You may now review the PowerPoint and also go on further in your books to consider this on the folly of rewarding A while hoping for B, i.e. the folly of rewarding the wrong thing and expecting something else to happen. Move on further to answer Leader's Self-Insight 8.3 and find out, are you really empowered? For revision for your exams, then you can go to the link in the course which is in the exam area that will allow you to practice some multiple choice questions. For deeper learning, go to the end of chapter 8 where you will find some discussion questions about motivation and employment. Thank you.